Thanks very much. Well, thank you for staying to listen to me. We're all here because we share a belief in the potential that digital health has to transform healthcare, to make a real difference. And I share that too. But my presentation really has just got one message to it, which is that if that potential is going to be fully realized, we're going to have to see a better fusion between expertise around technology and expertise around the realities of how clinical care is delivered, and the necessity to be able to prove with evidence that our innovations make a difference to patients, to give regulators the confidence that what we build is safe and that it does deliver that. And you'll probably notice my grey hairs and that perspective I have on it. If I think 20 years ago, about today, I just IPO'd the company I was running at that time, a biotechnology company, commercializing new technology around vaccine development from Oxford University. And we went through a 10-year journey building one of the world's leading vaccine companies. A lot of unexpected things happened during that journey. One of the most unexpected was that we became a target for animal rights extremists. And it was dealing with that issue, which in the end was all about trust, that I got involved in campaigning and ended up in politics and ended up science minister and having the job of trying to get the Department of Health, the Treasury and the Department of Business to understand how healthcare innovation could not only bring benefits to patients, but could also generate wealth for the economy. So, 6 years in government, turning 50, being kicked out of government in the 2010 general election, I wanted to build one more company that tried to deliver a double bottom line, that provided a return not just for its shareholders, not just in terms of delivering great products which really make a difference to patients, but also providing a return back into the public service, back into the NHS and back into the university sector. So what I want to tell you about with Drayson Health really is a new approach to the application of digital health. I'd be really interested in your perspective on it. And to ask you at the end of it, if this appeals to you, please join us in working like this. So, the fundamental idea is that we work in partnership with clinicians, with the healthcare provider, the NHS, to develop the clinical evidence that these digital health innovations, which have been generated from the NHS, really work and really provide the benefits. To do that in a way which enables us to use the very latest technology, the really latest computer science, machine learning, techniques of statistical analysis, within a structure which can be proven to work and to be safe. No easy task, given the very difficult timescales between the speed at which the technology and the science is moving and the speed at which you can generate clinical evidence that what you do works. So why is this such a big deal? Well, fundamentally, healthcare is becoming globally unaffordable. The rate of healthcare costs is increasing faster than the global economy. We have got to find a new way of delivering healthcare, otherwise we're going to go bust. And when you look at the challenges for regions in Asia, you look at China, the speed at which the Chinese population is growing and the expectations of the growing middle class in China, it would be impossible for China to train enough nurses and doctors to deliver healthcare the way it is delivered in the West to meet those expectations. There has to be a better way. When we look at pharmaceutical R&D, something I spent 10 years practicing, the current model is no longer working. R&D productivity has collapsed. The costs of the typically linear path to the development of new pharmaceutical products leads to products which take so long and are so expensive to develop, they're becoming unaffordable for much of the healthcare system. Increasingly, NHS unable to pay the high prices that are required to provide sufficient investment return. Technology is the answer to this. I'm an engineer. I'm an optimist too, that I believe that these technologies can really make a difference. But, as we've heard from some of the speakers already, digital health could create safety risks. It can, if done wrongly, undermine patient trust, which is going to be a fundamental thing that we must maintain to really realize the potential. And too many applications delivered in the wrong way leads to data silos such that we don't get the benefits of being able to look at patient data in the round, to use that as a platform for undertaking medical research. So, a new approach is required. And I think at its heart, what it needs is to find a way of doing business in this area whereby you can maintain alignment between what you need to be able to do as a business to provide a return for your shareholders, what you need to do to create the clinical evidence that you're delivering patient benefits, and what you need to do to be able to show to regulators that what you have is an effective product that is safe. And so we've entered into a partnership with Oxford University. It's been the world's leading medical research university for the last 7 years running, really expert medical and engineering science. With the NHS Trust, which is associated with the university, has been working very closely with the university on digital health innovations for about 10 years, and us as a commercial partner. It's based on 4 principles. Firstly, that this partnership is real and is long-standing, and it relates to, for example, the NHS and the university having equity in the company. That the revenues that the company generates, when and if it's successful, pay a royalty back to the NHS and back to the university. That what we do is led by clinicians. In each case, the technology has to have a clinical champion, a doctor, a healthcare practitioner who has a real problem for which the technology is a potential solution, and that it is focused on patients, that the trouble is taken to the UI design, in the design of the system overall, that it's a product which at the end is going to be loved by clinicians and loved by patients, such that they will use it, such that the generation of the data which it produces is of very high quality. And most importantly, that it approaches the regulation of the product as if it was a pharmaceutical product. So I went through the process over 10 years of learning what it's like to invent a new vaccine, to take it through the regulatory process, to be allowed by the FDA to put it on the market, and then to be responsible for factories making vaccines. It's my belief that that level of rigor and scrutiny is going to come to digital pharmaceuticals, to digital health. And we need to prepare for that, and we need to work with the regulators to create a regulatory structure which enables us to innovate at the speed at which the technology and the science allows us to innovate, but to do so in a way where we can show, in the way that a pharmaceutical company can show, that our products are safe and that they improve outcomes for patients, to the level of statistical probability which will be acceptable. If we do that, we will then justify the reimbursement and the payments which will sustain this industry in the long term. So this research collaboration with Oxford, it fundamentally covered three products which were the innovations which were most developed at Oxford, together with a strategic research agreement which creates a platform for the long-term collaboration, and most importantly, a data sharing agreement under the Caldecott principles, which ensures that the way in which patient data is handled is to the highest levels of privacy, transparency, that passes the test that any patient would want tested when talking about the way in which their patient information was used. That also provides return in the sense of continued investment in the medical research, and as I said, provides an equity and royalty return back into the public sector from its exploitation. Really, what we're doing is in 2 main domains, like lots of things that have been talked about over the last 2 days. It's about using the technology to provide information to patients and to clinicians in a way which is just not possible without the use of the sophisticated techniques around wearables, around the ability to provide, through applications, personalized information which changes, informs patient behavior, but enables clinicians to be able to see patients more clearly because the data covers that period between their clinic visits. And then to use these these innovations to create products that patients and clinicians love to use, that can be shown to improve the outcomes for a patient, someone suffering, for example, from diabetes or COPD, and then leads to the creation of a database around that fundamental disease, which can be used as a research platform to study the disease. And because the proper care has been taken in the way in which the system has been built, people love to use it, therefore you get great quality data. And because of the way in which the structures have been put around it, people maintain trust. This was the thing that we learned with animal rights extremism. The only way to convince people that, unfortunately, testing medicines on animals is necessary is to show them how it's done. To therefore maintain patient trust in digital health, you have got to be transparent. You've got to be willing to pass that test of being able to explain to the most investigative journalist, what is this data being used to do and who stands to benefit? So this is a complicated diagram, but it's making one simple point, which is that you start off with the current best method of providing care. And it's very important that you understand that from a clinical perspective. How is care actually delivered in that particular setting? You then use these tools to be able to improve that care through the generation of innovations, the use of new software techniques to improve individual care, which then starts to generate data. It generates data about the individual, which enables their care to be improved, but it also, over time, creates a data set. As you look at more and more of these patients and you grow the data set, you start to get information about the patient population as a whole. You can then start to look at real-world evidence of how patients are actually being treated, what are the actual outcomes, but this takes years. In the long term, if you can develop, imagine an application which was used by the great majority of type 1 diabetics, which provided them with information which enabled them to improve their control of their diabetes, but also enabled that data to be brought together to get a better understanding of diabetes, to enable us to answer questions like, why is it that diabetes in pregnancy for most women who develop diabetes in pregnancy stops within 15 minutes of the baby being born? Nobody knows the answer to that. To ask some science questions, we're going to require digital health to succeed. So 3 products, one for gestational diabetes, one for the management of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and one for the collection and management of vital signs data within hospital, aiming to put together information about the care of patients in hospital with the care of patients at home. Because that, again, is where the potential for digital health lies to really transform healthcare. At the moment, for many of our healthcare systems, the A&E department is where a lot of people end up who shouldn't have to end up in an A&E department. The more we can identify deteriorating patients at home, keep them out of hospital, the better. The more that for chronic care, we can help patients to look after themselves better, that's more significant the impact in reducing healthcare costs. But fundamentally, the better understanding of the overall patient pathway and how to improve treatment of these diseases. And in future, this really has the potential to transform how medical science is done. The ability to then use these data sets to be able to get insights into subsets. Most pharmaceutical practice has to be done on the basis of very large clinical trials, which takes the great majority of a patient population. But as we know, we're all individuals, we're all different. The future of medicine is to be able to make medicine personalized to the individual and to be able to separate the signal from the noise in the data sets by being able to not just be able to do clinical trials to answer one particular question, but to look back and say, well, what was the reality of how 24 million patients were treated over the last 10 years? Let's look at one particular cohort and how their particular needs could be better served by the use of this technology. So enabling us to understand the healthcare risk of an individual, to enable clinicians to ask what is to them really interesting questions about the fundamental disease which they're trying to tackle, and then to be able to use that to improve care. If you like the sound of that, please work with us to deliver this. Thank you very much for listening to me.